So Steve McQueen's new movie Widows is out now, or soon to be out, depending on where you live. And Hans Zimmer's score has got a lot of people scratching their heads. So having seen the movie and listened to the score, I'm going to give you my review of it today. And we're going to start right now. So as I say, I've seen this movie, I really enjoyed it. In many ways, it's a classic heist movie starring Viola Davis and Liam Neeson. So the premise of the movie is that these women are left widowed after their criminal husband's heist goes completely wrong, and they come together and try and get the money that their husbands were trying to get. But there's a little bit more to it than just a heist. In fact, the heist section of this movie only took up a small amount of time, I felt. And full disclosure, I'm not personally a huge fan of soundscape film music. I generally prefer film scores that have clear, definable melodies and motifs, but I really do appreciate soundscapes and all they do for a movie. So with that in mind, I have to say, I'm not really going to be putting Hans Zimmer's soundtrack for this on any favourite playlist of mine. But that doesn't mean I don't think really highly of it. In fact, the more I thought about it afterwards, the more it dawned on me actually just how brilliant it is in its own way. For the first sort of chapter of the movie, there is no non-diegetic music whatsoever. In fact, I thought I made a mistake in thinking that Hans Zimmer has scored it because there was just nothing. It's only really when the group is being assembled, the group with Viola Davis, Michelle Rodriguez, Elizabeth Debicki, and Cynthia Erivo, do you only actually hear your first little bit of the non-diegetic score. And I think leaving it this long until starting to lay your musical cards on the table really helped drive the plot along at this point, give it a lot of momentum, even if the cue at this point isn't exactly an earworm. And for me, the silence in this first part of the movie was incredibly uncomfortable for me, actually, and quite unnerving. But I don't think I realised until afterwards that this silence was helping me to not focus on the production value and the music, but actually on the characters and the script, and helping me to form a bond with these characters, to empathise with them. And I think the silence here also gives you a sense of the loneliness and boredom that these women are feeling at this point in time. There's no musical voice from above telling them how they should feel or what to do next. But when these first few cues come in, they're a driving, unnerving sound, but never oppressive. It never completely draws your attention away from the action, or leaves you completely drenched in sweat because it's so unnerving. Which Hans Zimmer has done to me before, thank you Hans. And he's using quite modern industrial sounds as well, which really suits the setting of working class Chicago. And there are of course more emotional moments, and the music and the cues really reflect that as well. In fact, in some places like My Son, it even sounds like choral music but on heavily edited strings. Typical Zimmer technique. And speaking of techniques, I was also really intrigued by how he brings some of his almost signature action and tension techniques now to this film. He does support the action and he does bring the tension, but it doesn't ever reach the heights of, say, The Dark Knight. And rightly so, it's a heist movie, but one with a rarely shared heart to it. You can't have these nerve-wracking cues being that nerve-wracking and that oppressive, otherwise it'll just take the attention away from the emotion. And similarly, the emotional cues don't ever reach the gut-wrenching depths of Inception, Dunkirk or Interstellar. And rightly so! The story being told on screen is never presented in a melodramatic way. These women are keeping their emotions deep down. Aside from one or two outbursts, the only way these women are showing their emotions are through really subtle facial expressions and mannerisms. These emotional cues then, they have to be moving and they have to express the emotion of course, but they can't be anything like time from Inception, say. So in the end, it's not exactly going to be a soundtrack that myself and a number of people like me, I imagine, will listen to again and again, mainly because of its lack of melodic motifs. It does a wonderful job, and I think more than any other Hans Zimmer score I've heard recently, it really does show his maturity and experience in this field. Despite appearances, it might have actually been quite challenging to get exactly the right tone, and yet he seems to strike this ideal balance between silence and noise, tension and emotional release, and subtlety and immediacy. So if you've seen Widows or you've heard the soundtrack, then please do leave your thoughts below in the comments. I would love to hear from you, because this one really did leave me wondering as well. It took quite a while for me to, get it, so I'd love to hear what you think about it too. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and share it with anyone else you think might enjoy it. And if you're new here, it would be amazing to have you subscribe so you can get more reviews, more behind the scenes stuff, and more stories about the importance of music and film.